Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she adjusted the scope on another rifle. The Nevada sun beat down mercilessly on the outdoor shooting range, but she had grown accustomed to the heat after 3 years working as a range helper at Thunder Ridge Firearms Training Facility. Her calloused hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking each weapon that came through her station, ensuring they were properly cleaned and calibrated for the next shooter. At 26, Sarah had never imagined she would find herself working at a gun range. Growing up in a small town outside Las Vegas, she had been more interested in books than bullets, more fascinated by mathematics than marksmanship. But life had a way of taking unexpected turns, and after her father's construction business went under during the economic downturn, she found herself needing work that paid well enough to support both herself and help with her younger brother's college tuition. The job at Thunder Ridge had started as temporary employment, something to pay the bills while she figured out her next move. But there was something about the precision required in firearms maintenance that appealed to her analytical mind. She found satisfaction in the methodical process of cleaning, adjusting, and testing each weapon that passed through her hands. What surprised her most was how naturally she took to the technical aspects of the work. "Martinez, we've got a special group coming in this afternoon," called out Rick Holloway, the range master and her boss. He was a gruff former Marine in his 50s who had initially been skeptical about hiring a young woman with no firearms experience. Over time, however, he had come to respect Sarah's attention to detail and her ability to learn quickly. "Special how?" Sarah asked, looking up from the AR-15 she was examining. She had learned to read Rick's moods, and today he seemed more focused than usual, almost nervous. "Navy SEALs," Rick replied, lowering his voice slightly. "Team from Coronado is here for some specialized training exercises. They'll be using our long-range targets and some of the advanced simulation equipment. Command specifically requested our best support staff." Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness mixed with excitement. She had worked with military personnel before, but never with elite special forces operators. The reputation of Navy SEALs was legendary, even among the civilian firearms community. These were men who operated at the highest levels of tactical proficiency, where the margin for error was measured in fractions of inches and split seconds. "You want me to handle their weapon prep?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "That's why I'm telling you." Rick nodded. "They're particular about their equipment, and I need someone who won't make mistakes." "Think you can handle it?" Sarah straightened her shoulders. "Absolutely." The afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains when the team arrived. Sarah watched from her position at the equipment station as 6 men in civilian clothes but unmistakably military bearing made their way onto the range. Even out of uniform, there was something about the way they moved, the way they carried themselves, that set them apart from the recreational shooters who typically use the facility. The team leader, a man who appeared to be in his mid-30s with short dark hair and intense blue eyes, approached Rick for the initial briefing. Sarah couldn't hear their conversation, but she could see Rick gesturing toward her station, presumably explaining the support procedures and equipment availability. As the SEALs began setting up their gear, Sarah focused on preparing the weapons they had requested. The list was impressive. Precision rifles chambered in various calibers, specialized optics, and ammunition that cost more per round than most people spent on lunch. Each weapon required specific preparation, from bore sighting the optics to ensuring the mechanical timing was perfect. She was in the middle of mounting a high-end scope when she became aware of someone watching her. Looking up, she found herself meeting the gaze of one of the SEALs, a tall man with sandy hair and a quiet intensity about him. He had been observing her work from a respectful distance, but with the focused attention of someone evaluating her competence. "You do good work," he said simply, his voice carrying a slight southern accent. "I'm Chief Petty Officer Jake Stevens." "Sarah Martinez," she replied, setting down her tools to shake his offered hand. His grip was firm but not crushing, the handshake of someone confident in their abilities who didn't need to prove anything through excessive force. "How long have you been doing this?" Jake asked, nodding toward the rifle she had been working on. 3 years here at the range," Sarah answered honestly. "But I'm still learning new things every day, especially with equipment like this." She gestured toward the precision rifle, which probably cost more than she made in 6 months. Jake examined her work, checking the scope mounting and bore alignment with the practiced eye of someone whose life had depended on such details. After a thorough inspection, he nodded approvingly. "This is professional-grade work," he said, and Sarah felt a warm surge of pride at the compliment. "Mind if I ask about your background? Most range helpers don't have this level of technical skill." Sarah found herself explaining her unconventional path to the job, her background in mathematics and her natural affinity for the precision aspects of firearms maintenance. Jake listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that showed he understood both the technical and educational aspects of what she was describing. "You know," Jake said after she had finished talking, "we're always looking for people who can think analytically about ballistics and equipment optimization. Have you ever considered that there might be applications for your skills beyond maintenance?" Before Sarah could respond, the team leader called out, "Stevens! We're ready to start the first exercise." Jake nodded toward his commanding officer, then looked back at Sarah. "We'll be here for the rest of the week. Maybe we can continue this conversation later." As the SEALs moved to their firing positions, Sarah returned to her work, but her mind was racing. The brief interaction with Jake had opened up possibilities she had never considered. For 3 years, she had seen herself as just a helper, someone who supported the real experts from behind the scenes. But the way Jake had spoken to her, the respect he had shown for her technical knowledge, suggested that maybe she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The sound of precision rifle fire began echoing across the range, each shot a testament to the skill of the men behind the triggers. Sarah found herself paying closer attention than usual, not just to the mechanical function of the weapons, but to the artistry of marksmanship itself. For the first time, she began to wonder what it would feel like to be the one taking the shot instead of just preparing the rifle. The next morning arrived with the crisp desert air that made Nevada mornings deceptively comfortable before the sun turned the landscape into a furnace. Sarah arrived at Thunder Ridge 30 minutes early, as had become her habit, but today she found she wasn't the first person on the range. Jake Stevens was already there, standing near the 500-yard target line with a cup of coffee, studying the distant targets through binoculars. "You're an early riser," Sarah called out as she approached the equipment shed, keys jingling in the morning quiet. Jake lowered his binoculars and smiled. "Old habits. In our line of work, the early morning hours are often when things happen. Plus, I wanted to get a feel for how the wind patterns change here as the sun comes up." Sarah paused, intrigued despite herself. "Wind patterns? Everything affects a long-range shot," Jake explained, walking over to where she was unlocking the equipment storage. "Temperature, humidity, altitude, and especially wind. Out here in the desert, you get these interesting thermal currents as the ground heats up. A shooter who doesn't account for that will miss their target by feet, not inches." As Sarah began her morning routine of checking and organizing equipment, Jake continued talking about the science behind precision shooting. She found herself fascinated by the complex calculations involved in making accurate shots at extended distances. It wasn't just about pointing and pulling a trigger. It was applied physics, mathematics, and meteorology all working together. "You really understand the technical side of this," Jake observed as Sarah efficiently arranged the morning's equipment requirements. "Most people see shooting as just hand-eye coordination, but the best marksmen are the ones who understand the science behind it." "I never thought about it that way," Sarah admitted. "I've always focused on the mechanical side, making sure everything functions properly. But listening to you talk about it, it sounds almost like engineering." "It is engineering," Jake said emphatically. "Ballistics engineering, environmental engineering, even psychological engineering. The difference between a good shooter and an elite marksman isn't just natural talent. It's understanding and controlling all the variables." The rest of Jake's team began arriving as Sarah finished her setup routine. She noticed that they seemed more relaxed today, joking with each other in the casual way of people who had worked together long enough to develop genuine camaraderie. The team leader, who had introduced himself the previous day as Lieutenant Commander David Walsh, approached her station with a specific request. "Martinez, we're going to be doing some specialized exercises today that require very specific ammunition preparation," Walsh explained. "Hand-loaded rounds with precise powder charges for different distances. Think you can handle that level of detail?" Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Hand-loading ammunition was something she had studied but never practiced extensively. It required exact measurements, understanding of powder characteristics, and knowledge of how different components affected ballistic performance. It was also significantly more responsibility than her usual duties. "I can do it," she said, hoping her voice conveyed more confidence than she felt. but I'll need to double-check all the specifications to make sure I get it right." "That's exactly the attitude we want to hear." Walsh nodded approvingly. "Stevens, you're our ballistics specialist. Work with Martinez to make sure she has everything she needs." Over the next several hours, Sarah found herself immersed in a crash course in advanced ballistics that was unlike anything she had experienced in her 3 years at the range. Jake was a patient teacher, explaining not just what needed to be done but why each step mattered. He showed her how different powder charges affected velocity, how bullet weight influenced trajectory, and how environmental factors required adjustments to standard calculations. "The key to precision," Jake explained as Sarah carefully measured powder charges on a digital scale, "is consistency. Every round needs to be identical, because even tiny variations can throw off your accuracy at long range." Sarah worked with intense concentration, double-checking every measurement and recording detailed notes about each batch of ammunition she prepared. Jake watched approviously, occasionally offering suggestions or corrections, but mostly letting her work through the process herself. "You're a natural at this," he said as she completed her first batch of match-grade ammunition. "Most people get impatient with this level of detail, but you seem to thrive on it." "I like knowing that everything is exactly right," Sarah replied, examining the finished rounds with satisfaction. There's something reassuring about precision work. The afternoon brought the actual shooting exercises, and Sarah found herself positioned at an observation point where she could watch the team work. What she witnessed was unlike anything she had ever seen at the range. These weren't recreational shooters taking their time and celebrating good groups. This was systematic, scientific marksmanship executed with mechanical precision. Each SEAL would take his position, make rapid calculations based on range, wind, and environmental conditions, then deliver shots that consistently hit targets at distances that seemed impossible to Sarah. Jake, she noticed, was particularly impressive. His shooting was smooth and methodical, with each shot placed exactly where he intended it to go. During a break in the exercises, Jake joined Sarah at her observation position. "What do you think?" he asked, settling beside her with his rifle resting across his knees. "It's incredible," Sarah said honestly. "I never realized how much skill was involved in what you do. It looks almost effortless, but I know it's not." "It's not effortless," Jake agreed, "but it becomes natural after enough practice. The real skill is in reading the conditions and making the right adjustments. The actual shooting is just the final step in a long chain of calculations and preparations." Sarah watched as another team member took his position at the firing line. "How do you learn to do all those calculations so quickly?" "Practice mostly," Jake said. "But also understanding the underlying principles well enough that you don't have to think through every step. It becomes intuitive." He paused, then looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Would you like to try?" Sarah felt her heart skip. "Try shooting?" "Why not? You've prepared the ammunition, you understand the principles, and you've been watching how it's done. The best way to understand marksmanship is to experience it yourself." She looked toward the firing line, then back at Jake. The idea was both terrifying and thrilling. She had fired weapons before, of course, but never at distances like this, and never with the level of precision she had been witnessing. "I wouldn't want to waste your training time," she said hesitantly. Jake smiled. "This is training. Understanding how all the pieces fit together, including the human element, is part of what we do. Besides, I have a feeling you might surprise yourself." Before Sarah could change her mind, Jake was leading her toward the firing line, explaining the basics of the rifle he would let her use and the fundamentals of long-range shooting position. As they walked, Sarah realized that this moment might change everything about how she saw herself and her capabilities. For 3 years, she had been content to support others from behind the scenes. Now she was about to step into the spotlight herself, unsidered. For 3 years, she had seen herself as just a helper, someone who supported the real experts from behind the scenes. But the way Jake had spoken to her, the respect he had shown for her technical knowledge, suggested that maybe she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. The sound of precision rifle fire began echoing across the range, each shot a testament to the skill of the men behind the triggers. Sarah found herself paying closer attention than usual, not just to the mechanical function of the weapons, but to the artistry of marksmanship itself. For the first time, she began to wonder what it would feel like to be the one taking the shot instead of just preparing the rifle. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she settled into the prone shooting position behind Jake's precision rifle. The weapon felt different from anything she had handled before, heavier and more substantial, with a complex scope that seemed to contain more adjustment knobs than a scientific instrument. The target, a standard military silhouette positioned 400 yards downrange, looked impossibly small through the magnified optic. "Breathe," Jake said quietly from his position beside her. "Don't think about the distance or the target size. Focus on the fundamentals we just discussed." The fundamentals. Sarah tried to remember everything Jake had explained during their brief instruction session. Proper body position, consistent cheek weld against the stock, natural point of aim, smooth trigger press. It sounded simple in theory, but putting it all together while fighting her own nervousness was proving more challenging than she had expected. "I can see the target clearly," she reported, trying to keep her voice steady as she peered through the scope. The crosshairs wavered slightly with each heartbeat, a phenomenon Jake had warned her about. "Good. Now what's the wind doing?" Sarah lifted her head slightly to check the range flag she had been taught to observe. The fabric strips were barely moving, indicating minimal wind, but she could see the heat shimmer rising from the desert floor that Jake had explained would affect her bullet's path. "Very light wind. Maybe 2 miles per hour from the left," she answered, repeating the assessment techniques Jake had demonstrated. "Excellent observation. At this distance with this ammunition, how much holdover do you need?" The question made Sarah's mathematical mind engage. She thought through the ballistic calculations Jake had taught her. Considering the bullet's trajectory drop over 400 yards, about 6 inches high? Close, try 8 inches. The elevation turret on the scope is already set for that distance, so you just need to aim center mass on the target. Sarah settled back behind the rifle, working to control her breathing as Jake had instructed. The crosshair stabilized somewhat as she found her natural respiratory pause, the brief moment between exhale and inhale when her body was most still. "Take your time," Jake encouraged. "There's no rush. When you're ready, apply steady pressure straight back on the trigger." The shot surprised her when it broke, just as Jake had said it would. The rifle's recoil was significant but manageable, and Sarah quickly regained her sight picture to see the result of her shot. Through the scope, she could see a small hole in the target, slightly left of center but well within the scoring rings. "Outstanding," Jake exclaimed, his enthusiasm genuine. "That's better than most people do on their first attempt at this distance." Sarah felt a surge of elation mixed with disbelief. She had actually hit the target, and not just barely. The shot placement was respectable by any standard. Around her, she became aware that the other SEALs had stopped their own activities to watch her shooting session. "Beginner's luck," she said, though she couldn't keep the smile off her face. "Let's test that theory," Jake suggested with a grin. "Load another round and try again." The second shot was even better, striking just 2 inches from the center of the target. The third shot was better still, and by her 5th attempt, Sarah was consistently placing shots within a 4-inch group at 400 yards. The transformation was remarkable even to Sarah herself. With each shot, she felt more confident and more in control of the process. "This is incredible," she said during a break to let the rifle barrel cool. "I never imagined I could do anything like this." "You're not just doing it," Jake pointed out. "You're excelling at it. I've seen trained military personnel struggle more than you are right now." Lieutenant Commander Walsh approached their position, having been watching the impromptu lesson with obvious interest. "Martinez, that's impressive shooting. Have you had formal training before today?" "No, sir," Sarah replied, still somewhat overwhelmed by the praise she was receiving. "Jake has been teaching me the basics this afternoon." Walsh looked between Sarah and Jake with an expression that suggested he was forming ideas. "Stevens, what's your assessment of her potential?" Jake didn't hesitate. "Natural ability, excellent technical foundation, and the right temperament for precision work. With proper training, she could be exceptional." "Interesting." Walsh studied Sarah with the calculating look of someone evaluating possibilities. "Martinez, what are your long-term career goals? Do you plan to stay in range support indefinitely?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She had been so focused on the immediate experience of successful shooting that she hadn't considered the broader implications. "I honestly hadn't thought much beyond this job," she admitted. "It pays well enough to meet my obligations, and I've learned a lot here." "What obligations?" Walsh asked with genuine curiosity. Sarah found herself explaining her family situation, her father's business failure, and her commitment to helping support her brother's education. As she spoke, she noticed Jake and Walsh exchanging looks that suggested some kind of silent communication. "You mentioned studying mathematics in college," Walsh said when she finished. "What level?" "I was working toward a degree in applied mathematics before I had to leave school," Sarah replied. "I completed about 3 years of coursework." The interest in Walsh's expression intensified. Applied mathematics with demonstrated mechanical aptitude and natural marksmanship ability. "That's an unusual combination, sir." Sarah wasn't sure where the conversation was heading, but she could sense that something significant was being discussed. "There are opportunities in military service for people with your skill set," Walsh explained. "Specialized positions that require both technical knowledge and precision shooting ability. Positions that come with excellent training, educational benefits, and career advancement potential." Sarah felt her pulse quicken as she began to understand what Walsh was suggesting. "You mean joining the Navy?" "I mean joining the teams," Walsh said directly. "Obviously, there would be extensive evaluation and training required. But based on what I've seen today, you have the foundational skills we look for in candidates." The suggestion was so unexpected that Sarah couldn't immediately process it. Join the SEALs? The idea was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. She looked at Jake, who was watching her reaction with encouraging interest. "I would need to think about it," she said finally. "This is all very sudden." "Of course," Walsh nodded. "It's a major life decision. But I want you to know that the opportunity exists if you're interested in exploring it." As the afternoon training session concluded and the SEALs began packing their equipment, Sarah found herself looking at everything around her with new eyes. The range that had been her workplace for 3 years suddenly seemed smaller, more limiting. The conversation with Walsh had opened a door to possibilities she had never even known existed. Jake approached her as she was securing the rifles they had been using. "So what do you think about Walsh's suggestion?" "I think it's crazy," Sarah replied honestly. 3 hours ago, I had never fired a precision rifle. Now you're talking about me joining an elite military unit. Sometimes the best opportunities come when we least expect them," Jake said thoughtfully. "The question isn't whether you're ready now. The question is whether you have the potential to become ready." Sarah looked out across the range toward the distant targets she had been hitting with increasing accuracy throughout the afternoon. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of possibility that extended beyond simply meeting her immediate obligations. The idea of pushing herself to discover what she was truly capable of was both frightening and exhilarating. "Would you really recommend me for something like this?" she asked Jake directly. "I already have," he replied with a smile that made her heart skip. "Walsh doesn't make suggestions like that lightly. He sees something in you that's worth developing." As the desert sun began its descent toward the western mountains, Sarah realized that her life might be about to change in ways she could never have imagined when she woke up that morning. The weeks following the SEALs' visit to Thunder Ridge passed in a blur of research, phone calls, and sleepless nights, as Sarah grappled with the most significant decision of her life. She had thrown herself into learning everything she could about military service, special operations requirements, and the training pipeline that would be required if she chose to pursue Walsh's suggestion. The initial excitement had given way to practical concerns and self-doubt. Could she really leave behind the stability of her current job to pursue something as demanding and uncertain as military service? What about her commitment to helping her brother finish college? What about her complete lack of military background or physical conditioning? Jake had maintained contact, calling every few days to answer questions and provide encouragement without ever pressuring her to make a decision. His patient support had become increasingly important as Sarah worked through her doubts and fears. "The physical training is intense, but it's progressive," Jake explained during one of their evening phone conversations. "Nobody expects you to arrive already capable of performing at elite levels. The whole point of the training pipeline is to build you up systematically." "But what if I can't handle it?" Sarah asked, voicing the fear that kept her awake at night. "What if I get partway through and realize I'm not cut out for this kind of life?" "Then you'll have learned something important about yourself, and you'll have skills and experiences that will serve you well in whatever you choose to do next," Jake replied pragmatically. "But based on what I saw at the range, I don't think failure is something you need to worry about." The conversation that finally tipped the scales came from an unexpected source. Sarah's younger brother, Miguel, called her on a Thursday evening, excited about his upcoming semester and grateful for her continued financial support. During their conversation, he mentioned meeting a military recruiter on campus who had talked about educational benefits and career opportunities in technical fields. The recruiter said the military has some amazing programs for people with technical backgrounds, Miguel said enthusiastically. Did you know they'll pay for college and even graduate school for the right candidates? After ending the call, Sarah sat in her small apartment staring at the business card Jake had given her with Walsh's contact information. The irony wasn't lost on her that while she had been worrying about leaving her job to support her brother's education, military service might actually provide better long-term financial stability and educational opportunities for both of them. The next morning, she called Lieutenant Commander Walsh. "I've been hoping to hear from you," Walsh said when she identified herself. "Have you made a decision?" "I want to explore the possibility," Sarah replied, her heart pounding despite her attempt to sound calm. "What would the next steps involve?" "First, you'd need to meet with a recruiter to begin the initial application process," Walsh explained. "That includes physical fitness assessments, medical evaluations, and aptitude testing. Assuming you meet the baseline requirements, we'd discuss specific career paths and training options. And if I start the process, am I committed to seeing it through?" "Not at all," Walsh assured her. "There are multiple decision points along the way where you can evaluate whether this is the right path for you. The goal is to make sure it's a good fit for both you and the Navy." 2 weeks later, Sarah found herself at the Naval Recruiting Station in Las Vegas, wearing workout clothes and trying to calm her nerves as she prepared for her initial physical fitness assessment. The recruiter, Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, was a professional woman in her 30s who immediately put Sarah at ease with her straightforward manner and obvious expertise. "Based on the recommendation from Lieutenant Commander Walsh, we're evaluating you for some specialized programs," Rodriguez explained as they walked toward the fitness testing area. "The physical standards are higher than for standard Navy positions, but nothing you can't achieve with proper training." The fitness assessment was challenging but not overwhelming. Sarah's years of physical work at the range had given her a solid foundation of functional strength, and while her cardiovascular conditioning needed improvement, Rodriguez seemed satisfied with her baseline performance. "Your scores are good enough to begin training," Rodriguez concluded after reviewing the results. "More importantly, your improvement potential is excellent. The specialized programs you're considering will include extensive physical conditioning, so we're more interested in your ability to develop than your current absolute performance." The aptitude testing that followed was more familiar territory for Sarah. Her mathematical background served her well in the technical sections, and she found herself genuinely enjoying the problem-solving challenges. When Rodriguez reviewed her scores, her expression was openly impressed. "These are exceptional results," Rodriguez said, looking at Sarah with new respect, "particularly in the technical and analytical sections. You scored in the top 5% of all applicants." The medical evaluation took place the following week at a military facility in San Diego. Sarah had never undergone such a comprehensive physical examination, but she passed all requirements without difficulty. More importantly, she found herself increasingly excited about the possibilities that were opening up. During the drive back to Nevada, Sarah called Jake to update him on her progress. "How do you feel about everything so far?" he asked. "Nervous, but good nervous," Sarah replied honestly. "It's like I'm finally moving toward something instead of just maintaining the status quo." "That's a healthy attitude. What's your timeline looking like?" "If I decide to move forward, I could ship out for basic training in 6 weeks, Sarah said, still somewhat amazed by how quickly things were progressing. "Chief Rodriguez says the specialized training programs have limited slots, so timing is important. And what's your gut telling you?" Sarah considered the question as she drove through the Nevada desert. The same landscape she had been looking at for 3 years from the range at Thunder Ridge. But now it looked different somehow. Less like a boundary and more like a starting point. "My gut is telling me that if I don't take this chance, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been," she said finally. "Then you have your answer." That evening, Sarah called her brother to explain her decision. Miguel's reaction surprised her with its immediate enthusiasm and support. "Sarah, this is incredible," he exclaimed. "I've been worried that you were sacrificing your own future to help me with school. This sounds like an amazing opportunity for you to build the career you deserve." "But what about your college expenses?" Sarah asked, still concerned about her financial obligations. The military educational benefits the recruiter mentioned would help both of us, Miguel pointed out. Besides, you've already helped me establish enough financial aid and scholarships that I can manage the rest myself. You need to do this for you. The next morning, Sarah walked into Thunder Ridge for what she knew might be one of her last days as a range helper. Rick was cleaning rifles at the main workstation when she approached him. "Rick, I need to talk to you about something important," she began, her stomach fluttering with anticipation. "Let me guess," Rick said without looking up from his work. "You're going to tell me you're joining the Navy?" Sarah stared at him in surprise. "How did you know?" Rick finally looked up, a knowing smile on his weathered face. "Sarah, I've been around the military community for 30 years. When a group of SEALs takes special interest in one of my employees, asks detailed questions about her background and capabilities, and then that employee starts researching military careers and physical fitness requirements, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what's happening." "Are you upset?" Sarah asked hesitantly. "Upset?" Rick laughed. "I'm proud as hell. You've got more potential than this job can offer you, and I've known it for a while. I was just waiting for you to figure it out yourself." As Sarah looked around the range that had been her workplace and training ground for the past 3 years, she realized that everything had been preparing her for this moment. The technical skills, the attention to detail, the discovery of her natural marksmanship ability. It had all been leading to this opportunity to discover what she was truly capable of achieving. The bus carrying new Navy recruits pulled through the gates of Naval Station Great Lakes in the pre-dawn darkness of a cold Illinois morning. Sarah pressed her face to the window, watching as drill instructors in crisp uniforms waited on the platform like predators preparing to pounce. Her stomach churned with a mixture of excitement and terror as she realized there was no turning back now. 8 weeks of basic training proved to be everything she had been warned about, and more. The physical demands pushed her body to limits she hadn't known existed, while the mental challenges required her to think and react under levels of stress that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. But Sarah discovered something about herself during those grueling weeks. She thrived under pressure. Her technical background set her apart during classroom instruction on naval systems and operations, while her precision and attention to detail made her a standout during weapons training. Most importantly, her natural leadership abilities began to emerge as she helped struggling classmates master difficult concepts and procedures. "Martinez," barked Chief Petty Officer Henderson, the lead drill instructor during the final week of training. "Front and center!" Sarah's heart raced as she jogged to the position in front of the assembled company. Public recognition from the drill instructors could be either very good or very bad news, and there was no way to predict which until they spoke. "Martinez, you've been selected for advanced individual training in Naval Special Warfare Preparatory School," Henderson announced, his voice carrying across the formation. "You'll be reporting to Coronado immediately following graduation." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. NSAW Preparatory School was the gateway to SEAL training, something she had hoped for but hadn't dared to expect. Around her, she could hear murmurs of amazement from her fellow recruits. Everyone knew that NSAW selection was incredibly competitive, and that most candidates were turned down. 3 days later, Sarah found herself on another bus, this time heading to Naval Base Coronado in San Diego. The California sunshine was a welcome change from the harsh Illinois winter, but she knew that the pleasant weather would be the only easy thing about her new assignment. SW's preparatory school was designed to evaluate and prepare candidates for the legendary Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, known throughout the military simply as BUD-S. The physical standards were brutal, the academic requirements were extensive, and the psychological pressure was unlike anything Sarah had experienced. But she wasn't starting from zero. The marksmanship skills she had developed at Thunder Ridge were already at a level that impressed her instructors, and her technical background gave her a significant advantage in the complex systems and procedures she needed to master. More importantly, she had developed the mental toughness and determination needed to push through when everything in her body and mind was telling her to quit. "Martinez, outstanding performance on the ballistics examination," commented Lieutenant Sarah Chen, one of her instructors after reviewing Sarah's test results. "Your understanding of advanced marksmanship principles is already at an operational level." "Thank you, ma'am," Sarah replied, still getting used to the formal military protocols but feeling proud of her progress. Have you given thought to specialization tracks within the teams? Lieutenant Chen asked. Your technical aptitude and marksmanship scores suggest you'd be well suited for sniper school after completing bar days. The possibility of becoming a military sniper was something Sarah had read about but never seriously considered for herself. The idea of being entrusted with missions that required the ultimate in precision and reliability was both intimidating and incredibly appealing. After 6 weeks of preparatory training, Sarah received the news she had been working toward since arriving in Coronado. She had been selected for BUDS Class 347, beginning in 2 weeks. The selection rate was less than 20%, making her acceptance a significant achievement in itself. The night before BUD-S began, Sarah called Jake to share the news and calm her pre-training nerves. He had remained in contact throughout her journey, providing encouragement and advice whenever she needed it. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" he asked. Terrified and excited in equal measure, Sarah admitted. "I know the statistics about completion rates. I know how difficult it's going to be." "The statistics don't account for your specific combination of skills and determination," Jake replied confidently. "Besides, you've already accomplished something most people never attempt. You left a stable job to pursue something you believed in, and you've succeeded at every step so far." The first day of BUD-S arrived, with the infamous 0400 wake-up call and the beginning of what would become the most challenging 6 months of Sarah's life. The class started with 157 candidates, a mix of Navy personnel from various backgrounds, all united by their desire to earn the Seal Trident and join one of the most elite military units in the world. Physical training began immediately and intensely. The instructors, all experienced SEALs themselves, pushed the candidates through grueling exercises designed to test not just physical capability, but mental resilience and the ability to function under extreme stress. Sarah found herself drawing on every lesson she had learned about pushing through discomfort and maintaining focus under pressure. The academic portion of training proved to be where Sarah's background gave her a significant advantage. Classes on navigation, demolitions, ballistics, and tactical planning drew heavily on mathematical and scientific principles that she found familiar and engaging. While other candidates struggled with complex calculations and technical concepts, Sarah excelled, often helping her teammates understand difficult material during study sessions. "Martinez, you're carrying a lot of your teammates academically," observed Senior Chief Petty Officer Williams during the 3rd week of training. "How are you handling the physical demands?" Sarah was honest about her challenges. While her marksmanship and technical skills were strong, the swimming requirements and extended endurance exercises pushed her harder than many of her classmates, who had more extensive athletic backgrounds. "I have to work harder than some of the others for the physical stuff," she admitted. "But I've learned that I can push myself further than I originally thought possible." "That's exactly the attitude we're looking for," Williams nodded approvingly. "Elite performance isn't just about natural ability. It's about the willingness to do whatever it takes to achieve the mission." The infamous Hell Week arrived during the 5th week of training, 5.5 days of continuous physical and mental challenges, with a total of only 4 hours of sleep. Sarah had been dreading this legendary test since beginning BUD-S, knowing that it was the point where the highest percentage of candidates chose to quit. But as the week progressed, Sarah discovered something remarkable about herself. While her body screamed in protest and exhaustion clouded her thinking, she found reserves of determination she hadn't known existed. When other candidates began ringing the bell that signaled their withdrawal from training, Sarah focused on the technical aspects of each exercise, breaking down complex challenges into manageable components. During one particularly brutal night exercise involving boat crews carrying heavy rubber boats across sandy beaches for hours, Sarah found herself naturally taking a leadership role. When her boat crew began to falter under the physical demands, she organized them into an efficient rhythm, calling out timing and encouragement that kept them moving when others were falling behind. "That's outstanding leadership under pressure, Martinez," called out one of the instructors who had been observing the exercise. "Keep your team moving." By the end of Hell Week, only 78 candidates remained from the original 157. Sarah was among the survivors. Exhausted but triumphant, having proven to herself and her instructors that she possessed the mental toughness required for special operations. The remaining phases of Bud S focused on diving operations, land warfare, and advanced tactical training. Sarah continued to excel, particularly during the marksmanship portions where her precision and understanding of ballistics set her apart from her peers. Her instructors began discussing specialized training opportunities that would follow graduation. Martinez, we're recommending you for sniper school immediately following Bud S, Senior Chief Williams informed her during the final weeks of training. Your marksmanship scores are exceptional, and your technical background makes you an ideal candidate for precision rifle operations. The recommendation was both an honor and a challenge. Military sniper school was notoriously difficult, with standards that exceeded even those of Bud S in some areas. But Sarah had learned to embrace challenges rather than fear them, understanding that each new level of difficulty was an opportunity to discover more about her own capabilities. As graduation day approached, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her from a range helper in Nevada to the verge of becoming a Navy SEAL. The transformation had been more dramatic than anything she could have imagined when Jake first suggested she try shooting that afternoon at Thunder Ridge the night before graduation. She received a call that made her achievement even more meaningful. Sarah, it's Jake. I wanted to be the first to congratulate you on completing Bud S. How did you know? Sarah asked, surprised by the call. Word travels fast in the teams, Jake replied with warmth in his voice. What you've accomplished is extraordinary, and I'm proud to have played a small part in helping you discover what you were capable of. A small part? Sarah laughed. Jake, if you hadn't encouraged me to take that first shot, none of this would have happened. The potential was always there, Jake said seriously. All you needed was the opportunity to realize it yourself. As Sarah prepared for graduation and the beginning of her career as a Navy SEAL, she understood that her journey was just beginning. But she also knew that she had found her calling, a path that would allow her to use all of her skills and abilities in service of something larger than herself. 2 years after graduating from Bud S and completing sniper school with honors, Petty Officer First Class Sarah Martinez found herself in a position she could never have imagined during her days at Thunder Ridge. She was deployed with SEAL Team 7 in Afghanistan, serving as the primary sniper for her squad, and using skills that had evolved far beyond anything she had learned at the Nevada shooting range. The mission briefing took place in a secure compound outside Kandahar, where Sarah and her team were preparing for a high-priority operation to neutralize a Taliban leader who had been coordinating attacks against coalition forces. The intelligence indicated that the target would be meeting with other commanders at a remote compound in the mountains, presenting a rare opportunity to eliminate multiple high-value threats. Martinez, you'll be in the primary sniper position, explained Lieutenant Commander James Morrison, the team leader for this operation. Distance to target is approximately 800 meters across rough terrain. Weather reports indicate variable winds and temperature changes throughout the day. Sarah studied the mission photos and topographical maps with the same analytical approach she had once applied to preparing rifles at the range. But now the stakes were infinitely higher, and the margin for error was measured in lives rather than target scores. I'll need to establish position before dawn to account for changing atmospheric conditions, Sarah said, already calculating the environmental factors that would affect her shots. The elevation change and temperature differential will create challenging ballistic conditions. That's why you're here, Morrison nodded. Your technical background and precision shooting ability make you uniquely qualified for this type of operation. The insertion went smoothly, with Sarah and her spotter, Petty Officer Second Class David Kim, reaching their overwatch position in darkness and establishing a concealed hide site with excellent visibility of the target compound. As the sun rose over the Afghan mountains, Sarah began the methodical process of range estimation, environmental assessment, and ballistic calculation that would ensure accurate shots when the time came. Range to primary building confirmed at 847 meters, Kim reported through their communication system. Wind variable between 5 and 8 miles per hour from the northwest. Sarah adjusted her scope settings based on the environmental data, drawing on the extensive training she had received in advanced ballistics and long-range marksmanship. The rifle she was using, a custom-built precision weapon system, was far more sophisticated than anything she had handled at Thunder Ridge. But the fundamental principles remained the same. Hours passed as they maintained surveillance of the compound, waiting for the intelligence indicators that would signal the arrival of their targets. Sarah remained motionless behind her rifle, controlling her breathing and heart rate, while staying mentally prepared for rapid engagement of multiple targets. Movement in the compound, Kim reported quietly. Multiple vehicles approaching from the east. Through her scope, Sarah could see armed men emerging from the vehicles and taking positions around the compound. Her training had taught her to remain calm under pressure, to treat each shot as a mathematical problem to be solved rather than an emotional event to be endured. Primary target confirmed, Kim said after several minutes of observation. Northwest building, second-floor window. Sarah located the target through her scope, a bearded man in traditional Afghan clothing who matched the photographs from their intelligence briefing. The distance was significant, the target was partially concealed, and the wind conditions were challenging. But these were exactly the types of shots she had trained for during hundreds of hours at sniper school. "I have a clear shot," Sarah reported to Morrison through her radio, requesting permission to engage. Permission granted. "Take the shot when ready." Sarah settled into her final shooting position, controlling her breathing and allowing her body to find its natural point of aim. The crosshairs settled on the target as she applied the windage and elevation corrections her calculations had determined. The moment between decision and action stretched out, encompassing all the training, preparation, and dedication that had brought her to this point. The shot broke cleanly, and through her scope, Sarah watched the target drop immediately. Without pause, she shifted to secondary targets as Kim called out new positions and ranges. 3 more precise shots eliminated additional commanders before the remaining personnel in the compound realized they were under sniper attack. All primary targets neutralized, Sarah reported as the compound erupted into confused activity below. Mission accomplished. The extraction was swift and professional, with Sarah and Kim withdrawing from their position and linking up with the rest of the team for helicopter pickup. As they flew back to base, Sarah reflected on how far she had traveled from the Nevada desert where she had first discovered her natural shooting ability. Back at the compound that evening, Morrison approached Sarah as she was cleaning and inspecting her rifle following the mission. "Outstanding work today, Martinez," he said, settling into a chair beside her workstation. "Your shots were textbook perfect under challenging conditions." "Thank you, sir," Sarah replied, continuing her methodical equipment maintenance routine. "It's what I trained for." "It's more than that," Morrison said seriously. "What you demonstrated today was the highest level of professional marksmanship. Your technical knowledge, combined with your ability to perform under pressure, makes you one of the most effective snipers I've worked with." The praise was gratifying, but Sarah found herself thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a range helper who had never considered herself capable of military service, to a Navy SEAL conducting precision operations in combat zones, the transformation seemed almost impossible to believe. 3 months later, Sarah received news that would mark another milestone in her remarkable career progression. She was being recommended for assignment to a specialized counterterrorism unit that conducted the most sensitive and challenging missions. The recommendation came with the opportunity to attend advanced training schools and work with the most elite operators in the special operations community. "It's an incredible opportunity," Jake told her during one of their regular phone conversations. He had been promoted to Master Chief and was now involved in training new SEAL candidates. "These assignments typically go to operators with much more experience." "Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life," Sarah admitted. 2.5 years ago, I was worried about being able to afford my brother's college tuition. Now I'm being considered for assignments I never knew existed. "You earned every bit of it," Jake said firmly. "Your combination of technical expertise and operational capability is exactly what these units need." Besides, leadership has a way of recognizing exceptional performers. As Sarah prepared for her next assignment, she received a letter that provided the perfect reminder of how much her life had changed. It was from her brother Miguel, who was graduating from college with honors in engineering and had been accepted to graduate school with full financial assistance from programs available to military family members. "Sarah," the letter read, "I know you joined the Navy partly to help support my education, but what you've accomplished goes so far beyond that. You've shown me what it means to pursue excellence and never settle for less than your full potential. Your courage in leaving everything familiar to chase something extraordinary has inspired me to set higher goals for my own life. I'm proud to be your brother, and I can't wait to see what you accomplish next. Standing on the deck of the naval base at Coronado, looking out over the Pacific Ocean as she prepared for her next phase of training, Sarah thought about the afternoon at Thunder Ridge when Jake had first suggested she try shooting. That single moment of encouragement had set in motion a chain of events that had completely transformed her life. She was no longer just a helper watching from the sidelines while others demonstrated their skills. She had become one of the most elite military operators in the world, trusted with missions that required the highest levels of precision, intelligence, and dedication. The girl who had once measured her success by her ability to support others had discovered that she was capable of leading from the front. As the California sun set over the ocean, Sarah Martinez smiled at the thought of what challenges and opportunities lay ahead. She had learned that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with a single moment of courage, when someone steps aside and invites you to take the shot.